Ain't letting a perish aboard the Titanic because there was no lifeline for our ancestors. Again, hit that like button, share and subscribe, and don't forget our ancestors who died on the Titanic. Black Titanic. This is Black Titanic. We're still in the search results. All right. Now, this is Maurice, attorney Maurice Jefferson Scott. He is really an attorney, you guys, okay? Age 43, Huntsville, Alabama. Now, let's look at the relative. You got Kimberly, that's his wife, Kyle, his ex-wife, and you got Mark, the brother. Now, over here, I'll pull his report. Let's pull it. Come on, Maurice, what's going on? All right, let's go over here. We already did the people connection. Criminal, too. Okay? So let's go. Charges that were found in our record. Not specified and unspecified. Now, when I look this up, it means that you probably did it, but we cannot prove it to beyond an unreasonable doubt. Say, for instance, from the scale from 1 to 10, probably on the scale of 9, you did it. We can't prove it. Now, not specified was just a traffic ticket, okay? Now, unspecified was Crime County, Kentucky. No, Crime County, Kentucky Court of Justice. Unspecified. You probably did it, but we can't prove it. Bankruptcy found on our record, 2 of them. Now, y'all, in Detroit, Michigan, 1 in 05 and 1 in 04. Now, y'all, you a credit repair person, Maurice. There he go, Maurice Scott. Okay, that's just to prove to y'all that he did it. Okay, the other one, 04. Let's go down here. Bankruptcy. Maurice Scott, chapter 13. That means bankruptcy. Now, a civil judgment, $914. Oakland County 50th District Civil Judgment. Now, you supposed to be a credit repair now, lawyer. You can't be doing this, Marie, and you're a credit repair lawyer. This civil judgment was $914. Now, abatement charges. What's going on with y'all in this bill? $222.30. Now, total lien amount, $222.30. Oh, you a repair lawyer. County city tax lien, abatement charges. Y'all know, 2015. Y'all know what that means. It means that, they were polluting the air. Nasty, filth, stanky stuff need to be cleaned up. That's all I got on him. This lawyer is really, he good. He good. Okay? I'm impressed with him using them lawyer skills when he went to court. Okay, this is 1865. The abolishment of slavery. And you bloggers, y'all young girls make me laugh. Y'all always refer to me as this little lady ain't got nothing to do. But y'all watch what I do. I'm out here in the streets fighting for y'all rights. This little lady don't be sitting in the house.
In the Constitution, the 13th Amendment states, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Although this amendment is said to have abolished slavery, mass incarceration serves as a form of institutionalized slavery.
The 13th Amendment also states that slavery shall be abolished except in cases where a person has been duly convicted of a crime. So the 13th Amendment actually has paved the way to create a whole nother level of slavery that was basically, and still is, sponsored by course, the United States government and sanctioned by the United States government.
Before we talk about what institutionalized slavery looks like today, it's important that we understand its origin and how it manifested itself. So what was life like for African Americans after slavery was, quote unquote, abolished?
Life for African Americans after the abolition of slavery was brutal. There were several things that were in place that made freedom a really dim prospect for African Americans. Freedom itself was provisional. So you had a situation where you had free blacks, but then you have blacks with no voting rights. But without voting rights, then what's the stop of an embittered South that had just recently lost the war to begin to regain power and then reenact their power in a form of terrorism against black folk? Okay, and they did that.
The Jim Crow laws emerged towards the end of Reconstruction in 1877 as a way to keep African Americans socially, economically, and racially inferior to white Americans.
Jim Crow was a term that was used for the system of laws that was separate but equal. In other words, you could, because African Americans had civil rights that had been given to them under the Constitution and other civil rights acts, to do away with Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws were saying that you could have separate but equal facilities.
Okay, y'all. Y'all know Biden is known as Jim Crow Biden because he really is active in Jim Crow laws. He believes in Jim Crow laws, that black people is inferior. In fact, he have blocked any and everything that will benefit black people. But oh well, some of y'all voted him in the office anyway. And now he's giving us his ass to kick.
And as a result, you used to see signs that for colored only or for whites only. You'd have restaurants that had segregated eating facilities. That happened on bus transportation and mass transportation, trains and things of that nature. That resulted in separate but equal facilities being given to people, but they weren't really equal.
Many Africans were not allowed to use their rights. They were terrorized from using their rights. And certainly this created, or perpetuated, I should say, a huge wedge in between African Americans and white citizens. And it really did damage to both groups because it gives white people the delusion that they were superior. And certainly many Africans, because of the power structure was in the hands of those racist whites, many Africans internalized those beliefs. So I believe it was Carter G. Woodson who said, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. You don't have to tell him to go to the back of the bus. He will go there automatically as a matter of course.
Shortly after Jim Crow, chain gangs emerged in the 1890s. Prisoners were chained together and subject to physically challenging work as a form of punishment.
If you were convicted of some kind of crime, and that crime could be as insignificant as an insulting gesture toward a white person, you could be convicted for that crime, taken to prison for life, and then made to work in a chain gang and essentially be re-enslaved with no pay. And once you got into the prison, what they could essentially do to you is not only force you to work in slave labor, but hire you out to corporations. You're not paid for it, and these corporations essentially are given the gift of free labor.
The U.S. has the highest incarceration rate in the world, having about 2.3 million people in jail at any given time, and majority of the people in jail have not been convicted of a crime. The percent of people incarcerated rose 500% from 1980 to 2014. As you may notice, mass incarceration is a huge problem in the African American community. The three-strike law implemented on March of 1994 was supposed to crack down on big-time drug offenders, but led to people who committed smaller crimes.
Okay, Biden, Jim Crow Biden, he wrote the three-strike law against black people. Your president that y'all voted into the office and Clinton signed the bill. Also the NAACP and the Black Caucus. Them old black devils that looking out for nobody but theyself to keep their job. they voted that bill in office also. Mass incarceration is the new slavery.
To serve possibly lifelong sentences. This severely impacted the African American community because more police targeted them by focusing more on urban areas than suburban areas.
What they were attempting to do with the three strikes was federally, if you had violated laws and you reached a third strike, you would then be asked, or you would then be put in prison for the rest of your life. So if there was a first offense with something serious as a felony, like a burglary, and then you committed a second offense that was also a felony, let's say that was something like a robbery, maybe a nonviolent robbery. That third offense, as something as minor as a drug or retail theft, could then qualify you for the three-strike rule, where you would no longer be eligible for probation or parole within the criminal justice systems.
But some people believe that mass incarceration is a good thing. Because of the increase in mass incarceration, the crime rate has decreased. From 1993 to 2001, the active violent crimes, such as murder, decreased by more than half in big cities. They also argue that mass incarceration...
You may be going to yourself like, wait, did the Emancipation Proclamation take care of that? And my answer to you is this. You actually thought the Confederate States obeyed the law. Okay, sure. On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln declared all slaves held in Confederate states to be free. But that news never reached the Texas slaves, and there's many theories as to why. Maybe someone literally murdered the messenger that was sent to Texas to inform them. Maybe, in typical Confederate fashion, they withheld some information from the slaves. Some historians believe that since the Civil War wasn't over yet, that the lack of Union Army presence in Texas made it hard for Lincoln's proclamation to be enforced. Nonetheless, it was cotton-picking business as usual in Texas despite the proclamation. Some slave owners in neighboring states moved their slaves to Texas because they thought that the Confederate Army would eventually win the war, and when it was over, they could get their property back. So when Union General Gordon Granger rode into Galveston, Texas with Union soldiers behind him, and he saw all of these slaves, he decided to make an announcement on June 19th, 1865. First off, a proclamation was made from the president to free all these slaves 2.5 years ago. Second off, you are no longer slave owners and slaves, you are employers, and those are your hired workers. Some slaves did get out of there before Granger could even finish his announcement. Other slaves decided to go and leave the state so that they could repair their families that were torn apart from the slave trade. Others decided to flee up north. And they lived happily ever after, right? No, of course not. By law, there were free men and women. But in reality, they were enslaved by oppression and violence.
Now, y'all saw the concentration camp. All this was in 1865 too. When the slaves were set free, a lot of them was put into concentration camps.
Black bodies still hung from the branches. Some were even shot for their freedom. But freed men and women wanted to celebrate that they were just that, free. They created a holiday that was originally called June 19th, but then it was kind of squeezed together, and now it's Juneteenth. When they wanted to celebrate the first annual Juneteenth, segregation laws forbade them from using public spaces. Okay, that's fine. We'll celebrate the rivers and lakes. They dressed in the fanciest clothes so they can combat laws that required them to wear ragged clothing. They barbecued, sung spirituals, preached religious sermons. Strawberry soda was the drink of choice, and they also ate a lot of red fruits and desserts like strawberry pie and red velvet cake to commemorate the blood that was spilt during slavery. These rituals still occur in today's Juneteenth celebrations, whether it be parades, cookouts, or 5-day festivals. And since whites didn't want to share their own spaces with blacks decided that they would raise their own funds for their own celebration sites, such as Emancipation Park in Houston, Texas. So as the former Texas slaves decided to migrate across the country, so did the importance of Juneteenth, which is also known as Emancipation Day or Freedom Day. In 1980, Texas was the first state to declare Juneteenth a state holiday when state offices are not closed but partially staffed. So far, 45 states have recognized the historical significance of Juneteenth. Yes.
Y'all know I was like in my 20s when I learned about Juneteenth. I had moved to Houston, Texas, and everybody was celebrating. And I had to ask, what is this? What holiday is this? And they told me it was the day that the slaves were set free. So now it makes sense since it happened in first in Texas. That's why the holiday has always been in Texas. But we don't know that.
Guess what? Alabama wasn't last this time. Alabama was the 40th state to do so. But it didn't get the same paid state holiday status as Confederate Memorial Day or Robert E. Lee Day. There's also a national campaign to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. Whitewash textbooks didn't, and still don't, mention Juneteenth. Because of that, a lot of people are still finding out about Juneteenth. So whether you found out about Juneteenth decades ago, a few weeks ago, or even just now, don't worry. There'll be plenty of cookouts, parades, and festivals to celebrate the resiliency of the Black community. I'm Stardenigan. Quit repping. If you like what we're doing,
Picnic.
Months ago, we aired a segment on picnic tips. Later, a viewer sent us an email saying, as a Black person, she found the word picnic offensive.
And that led to a passionate discussion in our newsroom about whether the word should be used. Local 12 assignment editor Michaela Boyd studied the issue in college. Here's her report, and some may find the details difficult to hear.
It comes from pique-nique, which is French. And so it is basically a gathering in a green space.
Christopher Miller with the Underground Railroad Freedom Center and Dr. Letitia A. Bates, a Black history professor at the University of Cincinnati, both can agree that picnic for the Black community has a very different meaning to them than to other races.
When we think about picnic in the Black community, what comes to mind is the symbolic reference of Black folks, particularly Black men, though having not excluded both Black women and children, of being lynched at what folks would call picnic-like gatherings.
In both the 18 and 1900s, lynching Black citizens who were sometimes accused of crimes was commonplace in both the North and the South. Dr. Bates says that at some of these lynchings, people would take pictures with the deceased, eat food, hang out with friends, and take body parts for souvenirs. At this ceremony, Miami University officials gathered dirt from the lynching site of a local victim, Henry Corbin. Historian Claire Runkle says that in 1892, Corbin was working for a wealthy white family in Oxford.
The newspapers basically put it as is that Henry was this beloved servant of the Horner family, and at one night snapped and attacked Georgiana Horner with a piece of wood and killed her.
Even though Corbin's family maintained his innocence and some people suspected the daughter of killing Georgiana, an angry mob went after him.
And he was sheltered by the Black community. They really tried to prevent his lynching.
Claire.
You didn't come out here today ready to kill a motherfucker, then leave now.
Yeah, I ain't got my cane. Okay, here we go.
We got a
Black news media out here covering
no cell phone.
July the 4th,
I guess you're trying to live stream and build your fucking credit in my formation, you might get shot. Uh-oh. Because if they start shooting at us, and you the motherfucker that can return fire, and you too busy on your goddamn phone, you're gonna get some goddamn body killed. Now let me tell y'all some good shit. Out of all these people who talk all that shit on the internet, all y'all motherfuckers talking about y'all about it and y'all done had enough.
Black news media.
They showed up.
Black news
These
media.
the real motherfuckers right here.
This is Arma reporting to you. Arma Publishing reporting to you. Black news media.
I want y'all to understand that at the same time we doing this, there's another group just like you in Phoenix, Arizona right now listening to me, looking at me. We in two cities on both coasts at the same damn time. NFAC is a black militia. And to all the white folks listening, we come to put you motherfuckers on notice. We're tired of talking, we're tired of working with you, we're tired of all that shit. Y'all want to keep doing shit to us? From now on, whatever you do to us, we're going kind of do we use?